chirp.
Today, we have an insightful panel on visual development, crafting worlds and characters. Please join Chelsea Blecha, Grace Kum, Ryan Lang, Airi Pan, and Sylvain Marc as they share their creative processes behind designing captivating worlds and characters for animation, films, and games. Moderated by Nguyen, Editor-in-Chief of Nerd Reactor, this is a must-see for anyone passionate about visual development. Let's give them a warm welcome, everyone.
How's it going, everybody? I am John from Nerd Reactor, and we're here for a little panel, a big panel for visual development, crafting characters and worlds. And I have with me here the panelists here. We have Chelsea, Grace, Ryan, Aaron, and Sylvain. And I'm going to do a little introduction for each of them. So first up, Chelsea Blecha is a published illustrator and visual development artist who specializes in color, light, and mood painting. She works as a visual development artist at DreamWorks Feature Animation. She has worked with Warner Brothers Animation, Tyco Studios, Disney Junior, and more. Chelsea is also co-founder of Resolution Art Studio. Her credits include The Bad Guys, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, Kung Fu Panda 4, We Are OFK. Next up, we have Grace Kum. Grace Kum has experience as an artist for visual development and character design for management roles as character lead and art director. Recently, she has had her first graphic novel released from HarperCollins, Wingborn by Marjorie Liu. Currently, she is working as a lead artist at Disney Games and has worked with companies such as DreamWorks and Disney TV, Cartoon Network, Riot Games, Nickelodeon, Netflix, Paramount, and more. And I forgot, her credits include My Dad the Bounty Hunter, Blue Eye Samurai, Max and the Midnights, The Legend of Vox Machina, and the upcoming Smurfs movie. All right, next up we have Ryan Lang. He's a Los Angeles-based production designer and visual development artist working in animation and live action. His primary focus is on environment design, color and lighting, and keyframe illustrations. He has worked for Walt Disney Animation Studios, Sony Pictures Animation, Netflix Animation, and Marvel Studios. He is also the author and artist of Isumboshi, a graphic novel. And his credits include Wreck-It Ralph 1 and 2, Big Hero 6, Mitchell's vs. the Machines, Doctor Strange, Avengers Infinity War, and Endgame. Once Upon a Studio, and the upcoming Moana 2 film. And next up we have Airi Pan. Airi Pan is a concept designer for movies, games, and animation, as well as illustrator who has exhibited domestically in the States and internationally. Her clients include Netflix, Blizzard, Activision, Warner Brothers, Pixar, Riot Games, etc. Outside of work, she loves to watch slice-of-life anime and sketch at cafes while eating delicious breakfasts. Her credits include Call of Duty Cold War, Back 4 Blood, 2023's Monkey King, and Legend of Vox Machina. There you go, we got hardcore fans over here. And then last but not least, we got Sylvain Marc. Sylvain is a French artist with over 15 years experience in the animation industry. His practice ranges from art direction and visual development to character design, direction, 2D and 3D animation, storyboard illustrations, and comics. He has worked with Pixar, Laika, Blue Sky, Sony Pictures Animation, Netflix, Cartoon Network, and more. His credits include The Box Trolls, Hotel Transylvania 2 and 3, Luca, and more. How's it going, everybody?
Good.
So with this visual development, there's just so many, I'm just flabbergasted looking at the worlds that you guys created, the characters, everything. And I guess we can start off with just kind of like the coolest thing about your job, right? Let's start with you, Chelsea.
Coolest thing. I feel like just telling stories is what I wanted to get into, and I just love, name of this panel, Creating Worlds. And that's definitely just working with color and light, and that's one of my favorite things, and getting to tell stories through that.
All right.
Yeah. Bring this closer, I'm pretty short. So yeah, I think just kind of like what Chelsea was saying as well, just the aspect of like being able to craft something that you kind of thought of in your head after meticulously researching, like this is kind of how I want it to feel. The best part especially is when you see the next stage after your designs, when it comes to model or the final frame, you're like, oh, they actually nailed it, or like, oh, that's how they did it. Just seeing how it develops and it kind of becomes real, I think that's the coolest part of this job for sure, yeah.
Ryan?
I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but yeah, it's pretty much the same. Being able to design stuff and then see it kind of like come to life. And an added plus is I love animation, and I get to watch cartoons all day while I make cartoons. So that's awesome.
I think it's being able to work with other people who are also super interested in this specific niche of work. So on top of what everyone said, you're now working with people who maybe do tech art or engineering, but they also ridiculously love animation. So you get to meet people who have your same interests and passions. That is an amazing part of the job.
And for me, yes, it's the same as everybody, and being at the inception of films, and also being able to do a lot of different things, like from character, environment, story, and so it's very wide and rich.
And let's see, I want to bring up something for each of you. Let's start with Chelsea. Yeah, just like your artworks, you have a style here. I'm just going to skip through. You can see just that it's very colorful, and I just love the aesthetic for each and one of these. I don't know if you want to talk about any particular one. Let's say this bottom one I really like.
The bottom one?
Yeah.
That's the video game that I was able to work on. One of my friends art directed it, Jenny Yu, and she brought me on for background painting, and it was such a cool experience learning from her too. We went to school together, and she and I have very similar style with like graphics and just overall mood and using color and light to convey that. And for that game, we were able to paint the same environment in different lighting scenarios, which was really interesting, you know, based on where you are in the video game. So that one was really fun.
And yeah, this one I want to talk about Puss in Boots and Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah.
And just the colors here at the top one, just showing off just an amazing world. And so yeah, what was that? What was like the thought process behind that? Like, whoa, like how do I cram everything in here?
Yeah, Puss in Boots was it was challenging in a way because it was a lot different than what I'd worked on previously. I came from Bad Guys, where it was Los Angeles and it was, you know, the real world, and Puss in Boots is just this fantasy world and anything goes. You know, there's pink trees and rainbows, and it was really challenging but fun to work on because it challenged me to use colors I didn't normally use. And that was a lighting key, so that was, you know, for the final scene of the movie. And then the bottom one is Kung Fu Panda 4, and that was a concept piece. So the purpose was different for both of them, but I guess you might not be able to tell just looking at them. But they were both fun to do in their own way.
Did you eat like at a Chinese restaurant for inspiration?
I definitely did a lot of research. Yes. Unfortunately, the Kung Fu Panda scene was cut, which I'm still sad about, honestly, because it was really great to work on. But yeah, it was a revolving dumpling bar.
And then, yeah, definitely want to talk about this here,
Yeah.
especially with the second movie coming out.
Yeah.
And so what was your experience like just working on this?
Probably the best team I've ever worked with has been on Bad Guys. Luke and Flo, they're my production designer and art director. They're just great people and so chill and easy to work with, so that's made my job much easier. But yeah, I love the colors in Bad Guys. It's interesting how you can work with muddy colors almost, and it would almost look like muddy colors, but it looks really good in the finish. And I learned a lot working on it, actually, from my art director. And yeah, it's a very big feat, a very large movie and great team that I got to learn from.
And let's talk about this piece here.
Yeah, personal work. Yeah, this one I did a bit ago. I was trying to play with the juxtaposition of having, this warm light in this kind of moonlit environment. And a lot of my personal work, I'm just kind of trying things and just experimenting. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I post the ones that work out.
All right, and let's skip to, all right, Grace. And then, yeah. So this piece here, I don't know if you can see it through there or through my laptop, yes. But yeah, I just love the just the fantasy aspect of this. So what was what inspires you for this?
So if some of you guys are familiar with the old Robin Hood movie, it was a shot from that mainly, from like how they're like posed and everything. But I did put my little twist and little additions to it, like with this little his scarred hands and how like just little additions to the costume. Because number one, if I could add color, I would please love to add color into things. So yeah, just adding that vibrancy to the costume. But also, I'm just a huge sucker for like old school medieval romance, like sometimes like melancholy type of things, but anything that's like fantasy, I'm a huge sucker for. So if I could add a little bit of that fantasy element or medieval element, I kind of have to. So yeah, that's basically what was going on with that one. And then it's just like the intimacy of it. Yeah.
I noticed that a lot in your works, the intimacy part.
Yeah, those as well. So similarly, just some elements of like that much more like softer fantasy, if that makes sense, especially with the left one. It was more so like, there was a whole series I was planning on doing with it, never got to it, but because it was a song based off of Haruka Nakamura. If you guys know Look Back, he's the composer for that short film. So I was listening to a lot of his music and I was like, oh, like I kind of want to think of like little Apollo with his horse and how it's like, how I could depict that from like different stages of his life. So that's what that first image was. And the second image is actually from a personal project of a character that is going through certain stages of grief and stuff. But this was, to be honest, much more of like an aesthetic piece that I just like really enjoyed doing. Just like, oh, like she's pretty, and I like adding flowers to things for no absolute reason. But yeah, it just adds to it. So that's usually what it is. But there's always like a deeper backstory that is not usually in these images, but I just like taking little snippets of it and just trying to show little aspects of their character. Yeah.
So what's the deeper backstory for this with her hair? It's like, it's very out, I love it.
Oh, like, yeah, just in the whole story, there's a whole aspect of like, her hair is especially a huge part of like her character, and I tried to use that as like a way that she develops as a person. In the beginning, it's like, it's long, she's never like really cut it. Really, it's a little bit more, not unkempt, but it's just kept more free naturally. Eventually the character develops and you get like much more cut short hair. So there's like a little bit of maturity that adapts to the character. So I was really playing off of how that aspect of the character can be shown through her design. So in this image, it's a very early stage of the character, of her trying to learn about her environment and everything. So that's why it's a lot more longer and more free, I suppose, and just not fully contained, meaning that she hasn't really fully like realized or learned about herself enough. So that's why it's at that stage. It's hard to explain unless if I show you the other ones, but I just like this piece, to be honest. Yeah.
I like it too. And next up we have.
Yeah. The yellow one's mine, and the other cat is my roommate. So we were just kind of joking around because we bought little deer catcher hats or something, the little Sherlock Holmes hat. We just put it on one and we're like, and we had the whole, Professor Layton soundtrack playing in our head, and we were like, it's meant to be, this is meant to be. So we just kind of rolled with the whole idea of like Detective Taro and Good Boy Haru and just kind of ran with it. So my cat, who is the yellow boy, he's well-intended, but he's not very smart. So if he's doing like milk deliveries, chances are you're gonna probably see like half an empty bottle in there because he's probably even drinking it without really thinking. But he always does little odd jobs, and of course, there's Taro, Detective Taro, who's the big fluffy one, who's a lot more he's definitely smart. He's definitely smart in real life too. He's like 2 seconds away from talking possibly. But yeah, that was the whole idea of like, because that's how their dynamic always is in real life. So we just thought like this is how they would be if there was like a Victorian cat age in some case. Yeah.
I want to have those pet cats around.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one, so if you guys know Celine Kim, we've been friends for like a really long time, and she designed a robot that is an absolute brat, an absolute misfit, and that's the one that is on, I believe, the right, that is cursing in Korean and screaming all sorts of things, and my bot was actually this character that he has a broken voice box. He can't speak, so no one else that is like biologically based would understand a single thing that he says, but because he can kind of speak in barcodes or QR codes, only the bot can understand him, so he's the one that can understand everything, and also he's the only one cursing at him as a result. But they're just fighting over groceries. And when I was trying to show their different dynamic in that sense, because one's cursing and one's just helplessly unable to communicate properly. And yeah, and the one on the red one, just in the same world as the bots, and we were just kind of having fun with our different characters that we created, but as you can see, they're clearly very intimate and very hot. So I do enjoy drawing very hot characters, but it's very self-indulgent in that way. So I just wanted to show off like, yeah, they're a little spicy with their holographic tops and all that, but it was just really fun to see like how, I really like messing with how close and how much I can compose their poses as much as possible, and I do spend a lot of time on like hands as well, because posing hands actually can tell you a lot about what the character is thinking or feeling or just how they're doing in that specific situation and time and stuff. So I really do, yeah, I know a lot of people don't like hands, but I really, really like hands because they just convey so much. Yeah.
And the bottom right.
Oh, the bottom right. Yeah, sorry. That was a book cover that I had done for, I believe it was also for HarperCollins, yes. Very cute story about these three sisters that kind of go off on this adventure to find their missing family members. And they gave me very specific descriptions of each of the characters, of the middle one being the oldest, the one with the wild hair being the middle, and then of course you can see the one with the overalls is the youngest one. So they have the oldest one who is meant to, they describe her as like a very pretty character, very proper. The middle one is the one that's usually the smartest and the most responsible out of everyone, that has to always corral everyone. And the little one is being the typical little one that is always like in a very quiet situation. It's like, what is that up there? Like that's the type of character she is. So it's just little aspects of it, but it's kind of hard to like, that was the tricky part, just trying to depict all of that in one book cover and try to convey those characters, but I think I got it across.
There we go.
Somehow.
All right, next up, Ryan Lang. I think this is a pretty badass, just a lot of everything's happening here.
Yeah, so this was one of those times where Ryan Meinerding, who is the head of visual development, at Marvel, he came up to me and he's like, so we got this fight that happens between Thanos and everybody. What does it look like? And he was like, oh yeah, and make it awesome. And so I tried my best, but yeah, this was so cat's out of the bag. I flipped this, because everybody here flips their canvas. I flipped this so many times that I actually got Bucky's arm on the wrong side, and I got roasted on Reddit for it. They're just like, this guy doesn't even know what side Bucky's metal arm is on. Why is he working at Marvel? And then
Yeah, like as if they could draw better than that. Like what?
It's Reddit. And then this is before Thor Ragnarok came out, so I had no idea what Thor looked like. And so that's actually based off of Thor 2. He's up in the left-hand corner, so he's very, trim and svelte. But yeah, this was, it was a really fun piece to do. Jeremy Renner was at the last moment added. He's on the left-hand side. But Yeah, it was a challenge to get the likeness of all the characters. That's kind of like part of the job at the visual development is to at Marvel is to really get the likeness of the characters so they can kind of see like a final frame of the movie.
All right, next up is this Big Hero 6 and Moana.
So this was early on in Big Hero 6 where we still had what, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this term, it's a little bit of blue sky where you get to like do paintings of things you would want to see in the movie, and this was more Baymax wasn't designed at the moment, and I kind of like gave him a little bit of like a Gundam kind of like flair, but I wanted to have something very kind of like impactful with a lot of movement. And yeah, the microbots at this point were, spoiler alert, they weren't like a guy moving, just microbots. They were like, they became their own sentient thing. So yeah, and I had actually went to school in San Francisco, so I was very familiar with the Muni and the Muni stations and whatnot, and always wanted to paint them. And then yeah, the Moana piece was, they said, hey, there's this lady that's made of lava, and she's yelling at Moana. What does that look like? I said, challenge accepted. So yeah, and it really just became an exercise in rendering like hot and cool lava, but again, trying to get, you'll see in like, if you look at my work, like a lot of, I try and put a lot of like movement, either in like particles, and I think that comes from, I heard a commentary on the Guillermo del Toro Hellboy, where he wanted to have more movement in the frame and in a fight scene, and instead of, because he had to do PG-13, he couldn't do blood, so he had Hellboy hit the monster with a payphone and all the coins going everywhere, and that movement just adds more, I guess, dynamism to the scene. So
Yeah, I can definitely see it in your work here, and especially this one here, a lot of movement.
Oh, this was early, again, blue sky stage, and they said this was before they became the Droon in Raya. They were based off of something called the Roxas. And so I wanted to do I actually did this painting in secret, which is weird because I was working on a map. And I was supposed to be only working on the map, and I said, this is not as much fun as doing a painting. So my boss would come by and I'd be working on the map. I still finished the map, I just did it faster. And then I did the painting, and every time he would come by and I was working on the painting, I would like really quickly minimize, and he's like, what are you doing? And I think he thought I was watching like YouTube or something when he wasn't there. But yeah, I just wanted to have something where it just felt like a very kind of like action-driven moment. I mean, I like quiet moments as well, but I think just having like an image that gets people like excited for a movie, that's kind of what I like try to do.
All right. Next one here.
Oh, yeah, so this was literally, I think the top one was the first painting I did for Mitchell's versus the Machines. It was, I was working with Mike Rianda early on in development, and again, it was probably the most fun I've ever had on an animation project, where he just came into my office and he's like, so, and I've been to Minnesota, my stepmom is from Minnesota, so I've been to the Mall of America, and he's like, so they're running through the Mall of America, but they're chased by a giant Furby that's shooting a giant laser. And I was like, dude, where have you been all my life? So yeah, there you go. And then the bottom one was a visual development piece for a personal project, the Destiny of Chuck. And I'm not going to get into it, but it's basically Chuck and his alien friend, and they're part of a kind of like a pod racing. If that's too old for you guys, it's from Star Wars. And they're kind of, I know, I'm getting up there. But yeah, and I just thought, again, movement, particles moving in the air, something dynamic and something fun to hopefully get people interested in the idea.
I'm actually really, really curious. When you were working on the Mitchell's piece, you said it was the first painting that you did. At this time, do they have character designs out like whatsoever? Or did you just have to like go from scratch?
Oh, yes, they did have, I believe it was Lindsay Olivares who did the initial character designs. And I just kind of like did a pass, and I mean, there's like little adjustments from the designs that came from the director, but yeah. So yeah, shout out to Lindsay Olivares for awesome character designs, especially Mochi, which I now have a dog that kind of looks like Mochi. So.
Oh. All right, next up, Airi.
Hi, hello.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about this piece here. There's like so much going on here with what is it? Just fishing for stars.
Yeah. So I really want to get to the visual development part. So I feel like everything that's up here is actually more on the illustration side. So this was a piece done for the mural for LightBox in 2023, and a process for that, because it was a 30 by 40 foot wall, was an incredibly large size to work on for an illustration. I feel that in visual development, like when I'm working professionally, I've never had to work on something that large before. Usually you're like, I feel like the maximum size images that I ever do is like maybe like 7K, like tops, but I had to separate it into like 6 different files to be able to save it. Okay, now this is visual development, so I can really speak on this. So this was one of the first paintings that I did for The Monkey King, which was the movie on Netflix released in 2023. And I actually did this, I joined this project when I was a student still at Art Center. And it was interesting because that's when I started to realize that color keys and keyframes are starting to kind of merge together as the same as visual development. So for this piece specifically, it's meant to be walking through a peach garden within, like for the main characters, that it would go from dark all the way until like dawn, so the beginning early day. And at first, they simply wanted color keys. So I did a couple of color keys, and then they said, oh, we like the direction of this. Can you please go in and add more to it? Basically like take it to a finish. And so what started off as a color key ended up more a little bit as like a keyframe. And that's when I started to realize that like, oh, it's not that directors give me things like, because in school I was taught, okay, you're gonna do color scripting, you'll do keyframe art. And on my first job, I realized, wow, okay, the directors, they just tell you what to do, and whatever you do kind of just fits the story. Like your job as a visual development artist is kind of like to be so adaptable that you can give them whatever they need at that moment. It's not like we need a color key and we need a visual development like keyframe piece. This was a personal illustration that I did for the Anime Expo XP pen demo. Illustration, again, is very different from Viz Dev specifically. So we can move on to the next piece. Okay, this is definitely on the more side of Viz Dev. So for me personally, I absolutely love world building. And I think that there's 2 sides of me that do illustration, that I love illustration, like pretty images, and then another side of me that really loves being able to see what aspects actually build up a world. And this especially is what you will be doing the most when it comes to either like video games, or if you're working on like being able to help world build something like for a new IP. This was actually both the top left and also the bottom right. These were pieces in a project that actually helped me get hired at Blizzard, which on the most funnest project that sadly got canceled in January, but one of the most fun projects that I ever got to work on. The top left is meant to be in a world where honey is a source of magic, and the bottom right is meant to be in a world where this an ancient chateau manor is alive, and the creatures of the manor have fused into the servants. So in this case, the moths have fused with the human beings.
All right, next up, Sylvain. Luca.
Yes. So, yeah, I joined pretty early. What can I say? It was awesome. I think because, so Enrico Casarosa is European, so he wanted artists that had the same kind of European feel to their drawing somehow. Like, you know, I've been really influenced by French comic books, and so he was looking for that. And what else can I say? And yeah, I had an awesome time on it.
All right, yeah. Some more
So
Luca stuff
that's
and box trolls.
More Luca. That was to, so that, yeah, it changed from the final film. That how it does. That's what development is. Like, it goes through different stages, you know, of rewriting. And so the kitchen, it was supposed to look a lot more like a real house, and then they turn it more into like a cave. And so it was. It turned out pretty different in the film, but that's the steps we go through. The top one is Hotel Transylvania 3 with Gandhi Tartakovsky. And so there's a funny story with that one is, so also it got really different in the film. I'm not sure that's there anymore, I forgot. So it was, I was to design this giant head. It was like a room full of booby traps that were attacking the characters, and I had the different, like many different steps. And at some point, like Gandhi was, because he's a visual joke person, so he wanted the stairs to be like a sandwich, like that the giant would eat. So that's why we got the ends like that. And it's just like that's what he does. He just rip off IDs and brings visual jokes, and that was one of them. And the box trolls, so I worked very early on the film. During the day I was working at Cartoon Network Development Studio in London, and I was doing box trolls as a side job, evening and weekends. And so I worked quite a lot on it, and that was pretty nice. I lost my visa to the US, like the ESTA, because of that film, but that's an whole other story.
We'll talk about it later.
So this is from, so that's part of visual development. We work a lot on films that sadly get cancelled. So that was one of them. It was called Escape from Hat, directed by Marc Osborne. You might be in the room, so hi Mark, maybe. So that was an awesome project. I joined in, it was first developed at Blue Sky for a year. So it was Mark, the writer of the book, and me coming up with visuals and ideas. And then when Blue Sky got bought by Disney, it got canceled. There was a 1-year hiatus, and it got picked up by Netflix, and we did another 1.5 years of work. So I was both in visual development and story, because I also love doing storyboards. I'm less known for storyboards, but I really like it. And sadly, it got canceled again. So it was 2.5 years of work in the bin. That happens. That's part of the job. And yes, another one. So that's Popeye by Gandhi Tartakovsky. Another 1.5 years of work. We did the old reel of the film. There was an animation test that got out. And yeah, it also got canceled, as we all know. And that one, the Popeye cabin, when I did that piece, Gandhi was very happy with it. It's like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. So I remember it as a moment, a really nice moment. Like the best compliment you can do as a visual development artist is when the director, you help him, get his idea on the page, and that's what he imagined, and that's the best compliment you can get. So.
All right, yeah, so I want to just piggyback off of just that whole story of just canceled projects, and I want to ask each of you if there's like one project where you're working on, and it's like, oh, this is going to be so cool. It's like, I can't wait for this to be like in the movie, and then you're like, nope.
I don't know about, okay, this was actually a pitch project. Most of my canceled larger projects, I'd be like, I kind of get it, that type of thing. The work was great, but the project was something like, okay, all right, that's fair. And to some level, thankfully I haven't gotten to a point where it was like, oh, I really love that project, I'm heartbroken. But there was a pitch project where it was basically, in a sense, like magical girls, but cosmic horror type of thing. I know, right? So yeah, I was really bummed that that was not going for, but I still hold some of the pieces I made for that like close, and I'm like, maybe one day we'll have one of these. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of them.
Anyone else?
That must be, for me, the Popeye and the Escape from Hat, because there was so much work and love poured into those, so that was a bit heartbreaking. But yeah.
Yeah, that would have been amazing to see. I saw the trailers of the Popeye movie. It looks so good. Oh man! But I think that no work that you ever do is like truly wasted, though. Do you know what I mean? Like no matter what, like that work will always like come back around to like find you. For example, like I think everything that we did on the canceled Blizzard project, so that game was going on for over it was in development for around 5 to 6 years, and I worked probably with some of the most incredible concept designers that I had ever met in my entire life. Like I thought, okay, I feel like what people post to ArtStation is so good, and then you get into the industry and you realize some of these people, they don't post anything. And they're actually the best artists, and you can't find them until you go in there and you hunt them down. I'm actually more mad that their artwork would never ever be seen. But I can say that it was going to be a fairy tale based game, kind of with the vibes of Breath of the Wild. And the creature designs were going to be we thought of walking cauldrons and things like that much before Elden Ring did. Okay, Elden Ring stole our idea. We were so mad. We basically, imagine Elden Ring but slightly more PG and fairy tale. It was gonna be amazing.
So yeah, so going off of that, anything where because you're working on these artworks for studios and they're asking you all right, let's do this. Is there any one of them the most challenging ever? Chelsea.
Most challenging?
Yeah.
Oh man.
One that sticks to your mind.
Man, I think Puss in Boots was probably pretty challenging for me just because of the color, because it was unrealistic and you have to find how that's going to work in the world that they give you, and the reference that you have is literally, the story that you've got in front of you, and you can obviously draw inspiration from what's around you, but you have to translate it to work with the story. So color-wise and stuff, I think probably Puss in Boots. Yeah.
I think I have one, yeah. Oddly enough, it's the Smurfs movie that's about to come up. Don't sleep on it. It's very pretty. I am not kidding. Okay, I know what you guys are thinking, but I swear by it. If it helps, the production designer is Max Boa. So, yeah, that's freaking fantastic person. But that was one of the biggest reasons, because he is a painting king. I think of a lot of the people here as design and painting kings and queens. So I'm just I just like designing, but yeah. And at that point, I didn't really realize how much I liked or disliked painting large scenes and moment paintings and stuff. I just know that I die a little inside each time, if that makes sense. But that was the one where, if you sent me props or sets, I'm great, I could do that. That's fine. And then whenever we got to painting a scene, because I was doing the main sets for a lot of it, I was oh no. How do I? And I send it in, and then he comes back with a rough paint over with all the light. I'm do I have to plus this? Because you clearly can do. I'm just a little speck of dust, and you're the whole atmosphere right now. I can't do this, but I still managed. It was really hard, but he did teach me a lot of I I guess like mental mathematics in terms of like how light and color would work in that space a lot more easily than what we are taught in school in a lot of cases. Like he was talking about it more as like additions and subtractions as opposed to me thinking theoretically in a lot of ways. So that helped a lot. But I did come to a realization after that. I was like, I don't like painting. I love designing and applying colors and playing with colors and light, but I don't like painting. Don't give me a scene. I will do it, but I will cry probably inside or alone. But you don't need to know any of that either. But yeah, that's the biggest challenge that I've had of recent. Yeah.
Right.
I think, and I don't mean for this to sound weird, but I think almost every show is challenging to a degree because you have to adjust to a certain sensibility of the director, and it may not be in your wheelhouse. I know sometimes I have I can do like action scenes and stuff, but for me, doing stuff with like charm and kind of like like an appeal quality to stuff, it gets a little challenging. I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's more adjusting to kind of like each director's and production designer's like different taste. But that's kind of the job.
I think that's so true because every single project, the director is so different. Like the person asking you to make art, they're always like different, and that's the person that you're trying to please. So I'm actually really curious, how long do you think it takes you to adjust to like a new director?
I don't think I ever fully adjust. I just have to turn in work.
Oh my gosh.
And I hope that it's good enough.
Was there a director that you really vibed with? Like for example, the Mitch, like when you talked about Mitchells and the Machines, like did you guys actually like click?
Well, it's yes. It was more that he and the writer were sitting in the office next to me, and there was an air vent, like an AC vent between us, and I could hear all the conversations. And they did this one, I'm so sad it didn't make it into the movie, but they did this one thing where if you've seen the movie, there's like a side story of two robots, I think. And at one point, they were in the forest talking about the ugly duckling. And they were rationalizing the ugly duckling, and then one of them was, and they were reading the scene back and forth, and I was just like cracking up drawing. And, but yeah, Mike's sensibilities were definitely the closest to mine in terms of like art style and humor, and the whole, I'm so sad the ugly duckling thing didn't make it into the movie, because at one point, like, I think, it's like, why didn't the ugly duckling just destroy all the other ducklings? So, robots, I don't know.
Airi.
Gosh, the most challenging, you would say? I think that I think it's at the beginning of every single project when you're trying to, just like what Ryan said, you're trying to understand each director. For example, there was one project that I worked on at Netflix where actually, I think you guys would know, but the director was a character designer from Disney, Min-Kyu Lee, and he had the most beautiful taste, like the most like perfect taste that he wanted for this movie. And his mood board, this was the first time that I ever saw a director send a mood board where it was the most like abstract art and super, super fine art pieces that I've ever seen. It was like walking through like a contemporary art museum. And I was so used to being able to see like almost like other concept art as reference. And having to adjust to that was like such a great learning experience. Like it was so hard for me to like try to understand like the feeling from like a sculpture of like a super, super deformed hand holding like a star. And he was like, this is the feeling that we want for the school that they go to. And I was looking at it and I was like, what? But it actually taught me to, nowadays, when I look at references, it taught me to look at the emotion of an art piece, even if it's so abstract from something that you're designing. So whether if it's like a school, then yeah, maybe you can look at a deformed sculpture and be able to find like a feeling from it. That was so challenging, but I learned so much. It was amazing. Thank you so much, Min-Kyu.
I think if I could add to that, I think definitely the more a director or creator has like a clearer vision in their head, it can be both a blessing or a curse depending on how deep you have to get into sync with them, or they're just very good at clarifying what they want, like in a communication way. It really depends on which direction that leans to how difficult a project can be, for
No,
sure.
you're so right. I really feel like visual development, I know a huge part of it like is, it looks like we're just drawing, but I think it's actually an interpretation of what the person that like whoever's asking you to do the art, you're trying to take their words and put it into an image. You're trying to interpret a human being and their thoughts. Like that I think is the core.
Well, that's
of
what
this
I was
dive.
saying about having that kind of comment where, so there was the Gandhi moment, and another one I was working with Jorge Gutierrez on Chihuahua, and I designed a place, and the comment I got is, oh, my wife said it's like he had been in your brain and made that picture.
Oh, that's
And
the
I was
best
like-
compliment. Yeah,
I was,
yeah,
yes.
oh man.
So that's the best kind of comment you can, because that's what you want to do, is help the director with his vision, and so.
After
Yeah.
you got that one piece right, were you able to get like consecutive pieces right afterwards? Or was it like
sort
just
of.
that one piece?
Yeah, that was a challenge to itself. Is a very special way of thinking, like visually and like none other directors. So I was always trying to read between the lines of what he wanted. But yeah, I got a few other hits, but that one, not as much as that one precisely. But
All right, so we have 8 more minutes. I want to open this up for audience questions. And I think we have Kay running up with the microphone. So does anybody have any questions? Over there, raising your hand right there. 3rd row. With the glasses?
Yeah, of course. Hi, guys. My question is, how do you guys start crafting worlds when you're given like the inspiration and the interpretations from your directors, and how do you craft the characters that fit within those in your pieces?
Ooh, I can start with this one really quickly. I feel that if you're doing it for yourself, like a personal project, then yes, you have to start from ground up. You start with your own world. But usually, if you're on a project, that is either the director or the writer's job to start with something. To be like, hey, you're in a setting of like the 1960s and we're doing this and this and this. Like, is that for, like, has anyone ever asked you to start from ground up in your viz dev?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa, okay.
No, I think, I mean, you're given like a rough brief or kind of like a general feel, but then all the specifics are kind of left up to you. And I think to like the first place I start is real world. Like if I'm building something fantasy, then I start with something that's like, you can't have a fantastic, I shouldn't say you can't, but having a fantastic fantasy doesn't leave it grounded in something that we kind of like go back to as like, this is a reality that like, it's like with creature design, if you design something that's like you've never seen before, or you design something that looks like a dog, like roughly like a dog, but it's an alien creature, then you kind of have like a connection to it. And it's the same with world building, where you start with something, and it can be covered up in layers, but if you go back to it, like maybe you've referenced some kind of like aspect of some cultural like piece, and then you've carefully like built off of that, I think.
Yeah, I think that a lot of those situations come up especially for projects that are in development or pre-production and stuff where there's basically no script. It's more just a prompt. So I do end up having to create pieces based off of my interpretation or something that I would like to see based off of the prompts that I am receiving at that time. But usually for what I end up doing is what helps me kind of narrow down my search field, especially on top of like if there is a setting or time period, there's that one, but also like for me, because a lot of the stuff that I do is very character centered, and a lot of the stories that we're going to be following we're following these characters basically. So I try to jot down like at least for myself, about 5 keywords as to like key things that I know that I feel that I should be feeling when I see these characters, or what type of person that they might be. And then going off of what you're saying as well, Ryan, just trying to apply some real life experiences, people that I know that could be this type of person, or from other stories that I have seen, or honestly even from like other films and projects that I have seen that have similar characteristics to these characters. I try to put them all into a mood board and see what correlates to all of these. It kind of shows you the reason why you chose this set of images or people to try and portray this character. And I also like putting together my own soundtracks, if that makes sense, off of like Spotify and stuff. I just make a playlist off of whatever project that I am working on and just try to set the mood that way. Because otherwise it's just me and silence in my own brain, and that's not a good combination to be left on its own. So to try and build a void as much as possible. But I guess in a way I'm trying to set up something to make sure that I don't overthink it as much as possible with doing the research and setting the tone and all of that for myself. And then it just develops from there on forward by stuff of what my leadership like interprets from the scenes that I am putting in front of them and stuff. Yeah.
All right, next question.
Hello. Oh, okay. I have a kind of like a technical question. So when I'm practicing painting light and vis dev overall, I always get stuck at like understanding color, and I'm always worried, like, am I supposed to know already how the colors have to look like? Or do you kind of go off like all of those like multiply layer, like overlay and stuff like that? Or do you like already like you open canvas and like, okay, I know the snow will become like purple in the shadow, or like some lighting will look like this? Or do you just kind of, like, how does that process look like necessarily? Like, my question is, how heavily do you like rely on those blending modes, layers?
I will die if someone takes away multiplier layer from me. So yeah, I use adjustment tools like crazy, and I will cry if they turn that off someday. But because a tool's a tool, at the end of the day, if it gets you to the vision or the kind of goal or target that you guys want, then by all means, utilize it. That's my interpretation of that one, at least. Does anyone else?
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, I think for me, I don't use a lot of those adjustment layers, but color is something that I've been looking at since I was a child, and I think just like observing life around you helps so much with light. It's up to interpretation of like what color things can be, but there definitely is, you know, some foundation to it, like color theory, and I think you should know all of that. But when it comes to putting things in certain environments or atmospheres, you can definitely like skew things. But yeah, I think it has to do a lot with observing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just wanted to say that, just to put you at ease with that, I also sometimes don't know what I'm doing. It's like trial and error.
Don't say that.
And figuring out, reinventing the wheel each time. So just the result counts, and whatever way you can use to get to where the point you want is fine. And it's just because sometimes the students and we're like, oh, technique stuff and how to do it, and so don't get too much stuck on those kind of questions. But I mean, that's my take on it. And I would probably have the same question to other artists, like, how do you do? Because to each their own, way. So
it's whatever works, I think, for each person. Yeah. I think it's different.
Whatever works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do we have time for one last question? Let's see.
Hi. Thank you so much, first of all, for being here and devoting the time. My question is more about the process, especially if you're creating, I don't know, in the beginning of your career, for visual development. How do you went about with your own personal project, and how did you curate it? Because it's like with visual development, there's so many elements like character design, also background. How do you balance that out? And if you can explain a little bit, like, oh, I start with mood boards, because it's easy once you're already hired by someone to give it those prompts, but how do you do for that for your own, and how is that process? If you can, yeah. And thank you so much again.
Just to jump, I mean, I'll let everybody else speak to specifics, but I think one thing that I feel is really important as a student, and this was told to me when I was a student, but when you're crafting a portfolio to get a job, and you're going to have other people looking at it, and you possibly won't be in the room, it's best to pick stories that people can easily reference. So like if you have original stories, that's awesome, and definitely, you know, flesh those out, world building and character building, but also try and at least have 1 or 2 stories in there where, like Jack and the Beanstalk or Little Red Riding Hood or something like that, where people can, you tell them the name of the story, and they're like, oh, it's the Big Bad Wolf, it's Little Red Riding Hood, and they know who those characters are, where they sit in the story. If you use your own story for your entire portfolio, they don't know the relationships of characters. That's just my 2 cents, but and that's not to like say don't do original stuff. It's just add a well-known story. But
yeah, I think I recall from when I was graduating, I spent about like 2 years working on my portfolio, and it did consist of stories that already pre-existed. So there was the Monkey King project that I had done with Selena and a couple of other projects. I also did the Odyssey, and stuff that I also like had my students work on was things like Swan Lake. They also did their own iterations of Pan's Labyrinth for fun as well, and just other like larger fairy tales. Yeah, like what Ryan said, it's a lot easier for people that are going to be reviewing your portfolio, because chances are they don't have a lot of time to sit down and look at it through in depth and read all the text and a lot of stuff. They just want to know what a lot of the first impressions are when they see it. So if it's a already known story, then it's a lot easier for them to understand and take in the information a lot more quicker. I did do a original project, but I didn't go as in depth with it like I would have done with all of the pre-existing projects that I had done that were based off of other stories. And I know this is something I still wanted to do, because it's like, if I'm enjoying it, then I know I'm gonna make better work. Instead of forcing myself to just do what I think is right and stuff. But what I did end up doing is that I know no matter whatever kind of story moment I put in, they're not gonna have any idea what is going on. So what I ended up focusing on is just these larger paintings of just depicting what each person is like instead. So they're in the set, however the lighting is, whatever they're doing will tell you what type of person that is, and that's kind of how I focused my original project in that sense, as like introductory things and like character studies in a way based off of the environments, the props, and the character design themselves. So that's what I did, because I felt like that would be a little bit easier for them to digest what is in front of them. So that's one way that I approached personal projects in a lot of ways.
Something that I was told too was in school was that you should be able to tell your story, the plot of your story in 1 sentence, just to keep it concise and not too long, so people can understand it and digest it pretty easily.
I want to add one thing in that case, and like for Viz Dev portfolio for video games, it's usually very separated between environment and character. So if people are trying to get into video games specifically, then I would actually really recommend that you choose to specialize in either an environment or to specialize more towards character. If you want to go more towards like AAA space, because they are very separate. In indie, you do everything. In that case, then include everything.
No, more for portfolio, because it's always the tricky question, what should I put in my portfolio? And it's always hard to answer because there's no magic formula. And I always say, just put your best. Don't put things you don't want to end up doing. So put your best and the thing you're the most proud of. And then, yeah, that's it. Because, yeah, I do, character, environment, boards, and so I'm it's always tricky for me to answer because I like to do all those things. So just do your best, put your best on what you want to do. So.
All right, so I think with that, that's going to be our time for the panel. Just want to say thank you for showing up, and thank you for the panelists here. And have a great rest of your LightBox Expo.